Are you here? Of course you're here. You're here and there and everywhere. Tuned in to the Paul Leslie Hour. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to welcome two jazz legends, Robert James, Bob James, Dave Kosmanyesk, Dave Koz, to talk about their new album, Just Us. And with that, let's begin. Episode number 1063, The Paul Leslie Hour, with Kosmanyesk and James, or Koz and Jim, just them.
Well, folks, we are rolling into another episode of the Paul Leslie Hour. It is my great pleasure to welcome two of the all-time greats in jazz, the iconic Bob James and, of course, the iconic Dave Koz. They have a new album out succinctly titled Just Us, out on Koz Entertainment, and it's a great album. I was very excited when I heard about it, and even more excited when I had the chance to listen and then listen again. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining us.
Thank you for having us, and I'm going to let Dave Koz give you some news if you haven't already received this news.
I love scoops.
This is
It's
hot off the press,
press.
Paul. Thanks for having us on your show, and it's an auspicious day because we just got the good news that the Just Us album is the #1 contemporary jazz album in the United States. So
Billboard magazine.
that's a really good feeling.
Oh,
Very good feeling.
bravo.
Couple of old fogies. We still got it, Bob. We still got it.
Well, and we stayed so pure with what we were doing with the no rhythm section and something really different from what we normally do. There was a lot of question about how it would be received, but we trusted our judgment that people would find their way to listen, and it seems like so far so good.
Well, the public has chosen, and they're listening to this album apparently, and they're liking it. So can you tell us, what was the spark? What was the thing that got this idea for Just Us going? Now the #1 album for jazz in the country.
Well, I can just say, if you don't mind me just jumping in, that it was Bob James who engineered this whole thing. Because I invited Bob to be a special guest on one of our cruises called the Soma Cruise, which happened last September. And that was the Italian Riviera cruise. And it was a really nice opportunity. You know, I thought I was doing a nice thing to Bob James. I said, come along and be one of our special guests. And he said, I accept under one condition. And he had it in his mind that we could record a couple of songs together, just the two of us, for that group of guests. And we set out to do that, and we never thought we were making an album. I came to northern Michigan, to Bob's beautiful home, the compound, the Unicorn Lodge, and where his family treated me like a king. And we recorded those two songs like that. And those two songs did, in fact, go to that group of guests in the form of a 7-inch vinyl, which was very special. But we recorded another couple songs on that first visit, and then I was leaving a couple days later, and I said, I don't think that we're done. Can I come back? And I came back about 6 weeks later, and we recorded more. And then we had one final session in Los Angeles, and before we knew it, we had an album. And it was very, as you know, Bob just said, it was, I think we were intoxicated by the sound that we were making, because it was very different for both of us, and very pure and very authentic. And we allowed our natural creative force to come through, and it worked beautifully together. We found ourselves really breathing and making music together in a way that was very powerful for me, at least.
Dave, do you think, looking back on it now, we see it from hindsight, the idea of doing this, would we have had the bravery to just start from scratch without the little 2-song gift idea for the cruise? Would you come to me, or would I come to you and say, let's just make an album with no band and no production and no drummer? No, Would we have had the bravery? I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
It happens just so a little bit at a time, and before we knew it, the two songs that were basically a giveaway felt so good to us that we just naturally felt we wanted to do some more of it. And even then, we hadn't fully committed to actually releasing it as an album. We just wanted to keep going while we still had that spirit. And now it's really fun to be able to see it, that it justified somewhat of a kind of bravery to stay with the concept.
More and more albums are being done in homes and home studios. Did that in any way shape the direction or the sound of Just Us?
Well, it definitely did influence the sound because we did record it in my home, everything except a couple of tunes that we did in Dave's home in LA. So both of our homes, we never went into an outside professional studio at all. They both were homemade, and yet I've been doing homemade stuff for so long, and I have an engineer that works for me who also did the engineering on this project, David Marchione, and we don't compromise the audio quality. And I don't believe that we would have been able to have the intimacy combined with I have the concert grand piano and all of my favorite mics, and we chose Dave's mics very carefully, and so it's not really fair to the final result of this album to just say homemade, even though it was. I don't think that we compromised in that way.
No, and the other thing that was really powerful was that because we were recording in Bob's living room, we were not on headphones. We were not in studio mode. We were in living room making music with each other mode, almost like it was a house concert. And whatever we got was that we felt was strong enough became the takes. But the takes oftentimes have mistakes. It's like warts and all. I know for me, I can only speak for me. You know, I'm a total perfectionist, and when I have made records in the past, I've really always looked at my sax performances as, you know, how can I perfect this and make it where I'm really, you know, confident that this is the best that I can put out there. But in a live setting, when you don't have the ability to punch in on your track because it was recorded live, then you have to get comfortable with imperfection, which was one of the subtexts of this project for me, was really getting comfortable with that aspect of my playing. So you hear all the key noise, the spit, the reed, the, you know, flub ups of certain notes. And I made more mistakes than Bob because he's at 85. He's pretty flawless, I would have to say. But I think that's the charm of this album that perhaps our other recorded works don't have, is that immediacy of, like, this is what actually was played in the room live, and it was captured almost like a live album, but it sounds great.
You're going to say
Since
something?
we're out on tour now, we have lots of free time during the day when we're hanging out at airports and in transportation, back and forth, hotel, whatever. And so we've had a lot of conversations that one of which had to do with this idea of perfection, Dave Koz. And I know that you at least agreed with me that uh, theoretically perfection is never possible to achieve by anybody, and it's great to strive for it, but there's something else that goes on in our process, and I know you feel it too, that we don't necessarily know that moment when the magic happens, and there's something that if we try too hard to perfect it, and with fixing or whatever else, there's the danger of losing the spontaneity, the off the cuff things that can turn out to be the ones that have the most charm. So sometimes in the past, I've told my engineer, please hit the record button immediately on take one. because usually I get worse. The more I think about what I'm doing and the more I try to figure out what could be the perfect thing, I start to get intimidated, and the performances are in big danger of being stifled or not have the looseness that I love.
Well, this question is for Dave Koz. What is the unique thing that Bob James brings to the table when you're making an album?
As a melody player, I play the saxophone. And in this particular situation, Bob served as not just the pianist, but also the guitar player and the bass player and the drummer and the percussionist and the string section, fill in the blank, 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 blank. But, I played with a lot of piano players and some incredible pianists. But playing with Bob, for me, is like floating on a bed of clouds. Like his, he's and forgive me for putting words in your mouth, Bob, but I think one of the things that is his strong suit is he's an arranger. And an arranger, in addition to being an incredible soloist and great songwriter and composer, but because of the arranging chops, he knows how to fill in the blanks and he's playing as if it's an arrangement, even if it's completely off the top of his head. That's just the way he approaches music, in this capacity of looking at it as a complete organism, and not just, I'm playing the piano part here, I'm playing the orchestral part, arranging for an orchestra, even if it's just him at the piano. So it's very satisfying. I think, in a word, for me as an instrumentalist, a very satisfying experience to play with someone like Bob, because all the blanks are there, even if it's just one person playing.
Well, now I'm going to flip the coin over. This is for Bob James. What is the unique thing that his Kozness brings to an album when you're making a record like Just Us?
Well, there are many. And first of all, thank you, Dave, for those nice thoughts. And yes, I am very, very often in the arranger mode. I've done it all my career from the very beginning. And I love that challenge of filling in the blanks, of deciding what would give the most support. And I didn't really know your process very much when we started this project, as to how you approach your own original tunes and flesh them out into what becomes the final product. So the most fun for me were when you just whistled or sang or just said, Bob, I have this little ditty. What do you think? I don't know exactly know what to do with it after this. And that stimulated my arranging chops. And there were a couple of them that immediately, wow, I could hear what Dave would have done with the same song had he been doing it on one of his albums where he did have his rhythm section and production. And I wanted to be brave, but I definitely had the nervousness that, could I make it a Koz tune feel complete without all those other elements? And could I give the bass roll to the piano left hand? And could I play it rhythmically enough so that he wouldn't miss too much having the strong rhythm section? So it was both nervous making and challenging, and ultimately fun to take it in the recording studio, where we could fix or we could listen back and then fill in some details. But then the next process, after we had the album finished, now we have to go into live performance mode, and we have to play those same recordings and not have the luxury of take two and going back. It's live and it's out there, and the audience is going to hear whatever we do. So both of those things, big challenge for me. And I can, right off the top of my head, say that Dave is the ultimate person to give your charts to. And when it's time in your chart for him to be the front man and be playing the melodies, he delivers he delivers the goods completely in the sense of romanticism, commitment, tone, and makes it a dream to be his accompanist. And I'm saying, I know it's a collaboration and we like to feel 50-50, but it's very exciting and fun to be Dave's accompanist.
Well, speaking of collaboration, there's one track that I find very intriguing. I hope you all can tell us about it. It's a co-write composition. Is TWO looks like two? Is there a story behind it?
Well, that is, I think, the third or fourth name of that song. I think it was originally called Bonehead, and it was one of those songs that Bob was just talking about, which was a little motif that I had in my phone. And we were joking about this before. Sometimes when I'm at home goofing off late at night, I live in California where marijuana is legal. So I'm just, in case this is played in a place where it's not legal, I was obeying all laws. But occasionally I'll get high at night and it's for whatever reason, these little melodies, most of them are crap. But occasionally you have to sift through them and there's maybe one gem out of 30 or something like that. But anyway, that started out as one of those little musings. And I had.
Hey, Dave, let me interrupt.
Yeah.
The next time you come up with some crap, make sure you let me know. What you think is crap, I probably won't think that same way about it at all. So give me everything.
Fair enough. Well, anyway, this was the first a little tune that I brought to him in the first session, and he said, "What do you got?" And I played him this, and it lasted maybe 15 seconds, and he said, "Stop." And I said, "You don't want to hear anything else?" And he said, "No, I got it." And then I watched Bob Jamesify this little motif and flesh it out into a real song with a whole rhythm section concept, but just all on the piano. And it was honestly very stunning to be able to witness that process of how he writes music and how he interprets other people's music and to make it his own. So that song started out as Bonehead, and then we renamed it Long Lake, which was the lake that's right in front of where we were recording. Bob's beautiful home overlooks this gorgeous lake in Traverse City called Long Lake. And then the more I thought about it, it felt like that wasn't the name of the song, and we eventually landed on TWO, as the name of that song. Ironically, it's the third song on the album. It's called number 2, but it's actually the third song. But it's a fun song to play, and it's a really great song to play live, too.
Well, I just want to remind everybody out there to please obey all state and local laws wherever you are. Now, I want to be respectful of your guys' time. Do you have time for 2 more quick questions?
We do. I do. Dave is busier than I am, so if we go on a little bit long and Dave disappears, we'll forgive him, but I hope he doesn't.
No, for sure. Two is good.
Okay, excellent. On the note of 2, I think one of the benchmarks or one of the ways you can test if an instrumental recording of a popular song works is when you're listening to it, if it makes you think of the famous version where there's a singer, but you don't miss the vocal. And I'm talking about one of the tracks on here. It's one of my all-time favorite songs, All the Way. And I think you guys hit the ball out of the park with this one. What got you guys to what kind of got the idea behind All the Way to put that on the record?
Wow, I'm smiling. I want to respond first quickly because it was Dave's idea. We were tossing song titles back and forth over the phone because we expected that we would have both standard songs and our own originals. And did we have favorites? And so I was giving him some of mine, and he was giving me some of his, and that was kind of the conversational process. And I admit, when he brought up All the Way, I had never played it, and I don't know, Frank Sinatra in my head. I had the very much pop vocal thought of that song, and I wasn't sure how it would work, but there I discovered and starting to play it, there was so much meat in the structure of it, this very, very strong melody, and once again having Dave Koz playing that melody with me trying to support it from underneath and then occasionally take over and carry the ball with the melody myself. It also became one of my favorites on the album, and thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, that was always one of my favorite songs. I grew up in a household that basically worshipped Frank Sinatra. My parents were big crooner fans, and he was the number one crooner in my family. So I always loved that song. But I remember bringing it to Bob, and Bob saying, "Ooh, that's kind of a little left of field choice here. Let me see what I can do with that." And then cut to the fact that we were making the take. We were doing the take in the living room. This is one of those experiences that was happening in real time. Like I'm listening, we're playing the song, and I'm listening to Bob. He's 3 feet away from me, and I'm looking at him and I'm listening to him play. And I recognize the fact that I'm not playing very well on this, but he's having the take of his life. I mean, everything he's playing is just flowing out of him so beautifully. All these notes, all this, I mean, his solo on that song it's like a master class. Meanwhile, I'm just struggling to get through the song and not screw up too much because I know that this is the take that's going on the record because he's playing so perfectly. That will always stay with me. But this is one of those ones, and to hear your comment, Paul, on it, that it affected you that way, is proof that all of these things that are inside of our heads during the making don't really matter when it's the listener responding to the energy that's being made by the music. And so thank you for that compliment. And I love it too. I really love that song. And I love the way it starts too. It starts with a piano solo. Every time that we played that song, I don't know how many takes we did, but every time the intro was different. And wonderful. But that
Hey,
was
Dave, I hope you don't mind me picking up on your choice of the word crooner, because for both of us, Frank Sinatra was the ultimate crooner, but we came from that era where that was a word that was used a lot and maybe not so much anymore. Some of the more recent, certainly not the hip hop artists, you wouldn't call them crooners.
no.
But if I could say that you are the ultimate crooner on the saxophone when you play the melodies that way. You're not giving us any words, but to my ear, you're crooning in that way that I would use that word as the ultimate way to play ballads or standards and have it feel like it was Frank Sinatra doing it, but you're doing it on the
Wow.
saxophone. So
Wow.
you may croon for me anytime.
I shall continue the croon. And thank you for for saying that. That's like the best compliment I've ever gotten.
And we've got it all on tape. Now, my last question, something that I absolutely love about instrumental music is that it is so international in its nature. And I know that I'm going to hear from people in Japan, Europe. Instrumental music has that quality because, I mean, all music does. But what I'm getting at is the question, and that is, we just don't know where that person is who listened to Just Us is right now. They're watching this interview or listening to it. What would you say to that person, and what do you want them to get out of the experience of listening to Just Us?
You want to
I'll
take this?
let you start it, Dave.
Well, the first thing that I've thought about with this question is a good question, is that what Bob said to me, this was after we finished the album and we were listening to it in his studio. And he said it to me several times. He said, I just hope that the listener will give us 40 minutes of their time to listen to this album from start to finish, which is not really the way that people listen to music anymore. We listen to playlists, we listen to a couple songs here, a couple songs there, make our own playlists, etc. But this album really is it does have a beginning, middle, and end, and it does tell a story. And you hear Bob through and through. You hear him on the standards, his approach on the standards. You hear him on his own compositions, which I call anchors to this album. There's 3 unbelievable compositions. And then you hear him interpret my compositions. And each of us gets a chance to really be heard in a new and unique way, especially for our fans. And so I think that's my hope as well, is that people will give this a chance to be listened to as a whole statement. But I agree with you, at its core, instrumental music allows the listener to paint their own picture. We're not saying in each song, other than the title, we're not saying what this song means to the composer or to the artists that are performing it. We're giving the listener, in whatever country, in whatever language that they speak, a chance to respond to the music on an emotional, energetic level. And that's one of the reasons why I think that instrumental music has a place in every record collection. Maybe it's not the majority of a person's record list or their listening habits, but it should be, whether it's a Sunday afternoon or a Wednesday night or whatever, just to let your mind go and not be dictated what it should be thinking about by the lyrics. That's what makes me very prideful about the music that I make, and to be an instrumental music advocate in the work that I do outside of my own music.
If I can chime in my part of it, I love your question, Paul, because we have so much control when we're in the studio making an album, and both Dave and I have made a lot of albums, and that is our primary occupation as musicians, is to make this music that while you're doing it, you have essentially complete control. You can choose which songs you're going to do. You can choose how you do them, which take, and all of this. But once the album gets released and is available in Japan and Hong Kong and the Philippines or wherever, it takes on a life of its own. You have no control over it whatsoever. And that has always fascinated me. And it always intrigues me when people who have listened to our music get a chance to describe their impressions of it that are separate from what we thought about when we were doing it. And on this time going out on tour, which we're still in the middle of doing some concerts and going out to greet the audience afterwards, to sign CDs and have a little short conversations with them. One phrase happened repeatedly, actually, this time, which I love it, and I consider it a beautiful compliment, which is that they say your music has become the soundtrack to our life. And it's I can't imagine a better way of expressing it than that. And if we become that, especially if it's a romantic one, that it's a good soundtrack that leads to good things in their life, of course. Or even if it leads to them getting through some difficult times in their life, because music is abstract enough, especially instrumental music. We're not telling them words exactly. We're expressing abstract thoughts. And I love that. And I love to hear back from the people that let us know how our music affected them.
Well, for anybody out there who's watching or listening, I want you to treat yourself right and listen from beginning to end to just us, Dave Koz and Bob James, and treat yourself extra right. And if you want to get on the road and take a little road trip, or maybe it's close by, go see Bob, James, and Dave Koz together live in concert, and you will remember it for the rest of your life. Gentlemen, thank you so much for spending time with us. It's been a great pleasure.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks so much, Paul. It's a pleasure is ours.
Thank you.
Ciao, guys.
Bye-bye. And Sonny, thank you for chaperoning. Congrats.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We thank you and appreciate you dropping in for the Paul Leslie Hour today. You know, you can help the Paul Leslie Hour in our mission to provide independent media content like this by visiting www.thepaulleslie.com/support. We truly thank you. This is your announcer speaking. Performance of The Entertainer intro song and Corina Corina outro song, courtesy of John Primorano. Well, that's it for today. So until next time, be safe and be good.